Hello Final Fantasy heads, today we're here to talk about Final Fantasy Ever Crisis, and I'm going to be working my way through making a character's guide that will show you the unique capabilities of each character and kind of help you understand their role within the game through the lens of their equipment. Because I think that the weapons that we can put on characters are probably the most unique, or the thing that makes them the most unique. This is a weapons gacha. There's going to be a lot of emphasis placed on the weapons, so getting to understand them early is a really important way of understanding what characters can do and how. So I think this is going to be really helpful for us. I do also want to point out that, while I'm using the wish list in-game to reference all of the stats that we're going to be talking about here, is a handy thing that you can do as well. I am also using, as a bit of a cheat sheet, a Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis guide by ZGod. Thank you so much for making this spreadsheet available, and compiling all the information that you have in it is quite a lot, and just the amount of information that's just sitting here that you've compiled is great. But I'm going to go into the weapons guide because that's what we're going to be talking about today. One little caveat that I would like to interject into the beginning of this video is that while in this video and probably across the series, I'm going to be trying to advocate for as many different builds and playstyles as a character kind of has access to. There are definitely times where just because you have the weapons to do something doesn't mean you should, or doesn't mean that that character should. Sephiroth can be a pretty good example of this, because really I think the idealized build, at least until new weapons come out that change this, is going to be a very magic DPS oriented one. He has not only an LB but also a weapon buff that gives him additional magic attack power. He has twice as many AoE magic skills as he does physical skills from weapons. There's also a lot more weapons that modify his magic attack power, and in addition to that, the kind of new and most premium weapon for him, or at least the ice-oriented one, is also magic scaling as well. The blade that we got for him has a magic debuff on it. There's a lot of things that point him towards magic. That if you're striving for some kind of optimized goal, then making Sephiroth your physical damage dealer probably isn't it. But additionally, to go a little bit further into that, making him your buffer or debuffer probably also isn't it. Ultimately, while I think it's a good sword and it's one that I'm using currently and one that I'm even pulling for, the Nameless probably isn't a good long-term sword for him unless some of the other unique mechanics, like the 2 ATB bar skill, which I really think is maybe undervalued in how interesting this could be, especially in the long term of the game. Maybe it's just something that hasn't quite been cracked yet. But at the same time, I think that it would be kind of a waste of the ATB of your DPS, and that's probably what you're building Sephiroth as. He's big damaging boy, always has been, always will be. This is kind of the thing that we know about him. He hits hard. It is his biggest and most compelling trait. If you don't think he can kill it, he can kill it. He can take out anything. So why are you building him as a buffer? The only real exception to this right now is the Ionbi or his Ardent Flare, because there's no one else who can buff his magical attack. He's the only person who can do it, so it's worthwhile that he does it. But rest assured that in the future you could probably drop Ionbi or something as soon as you find someone else who can use their ATB to buff Sephiroth's magic attack, because you generally don't want him doing that. The only reason that that becomes a good build for him at this point in the game is that there's literally no one else who can. So those are all just things to keep in mind as you're watching through this, and just keep in mind that for the idealized build that you're probably going to be going into, keep an eye out for magic attack up, keep an eye out for magic scaling abilities, and keep an eye out for things that modify Sephiroth's magic attacking power or decreases magic defense in opponents. All of these things will become more or less important for him, and building for these things is kind of the constellation that you want to go for him in general. But with that being said, let's check out some of the other weapons. And the first weapon that I want to talk about is the Nameless, because we all got this one for free. So let's go ahead and look at its max stats. This is going to be a physical katana, and Telluric Fury is going to be a physical non-elemental damage, single target skill, very low modifier. So this is going to be maybe half the modifier of other comparable skills. However, that's going to make a lot more sense when you realize that its ATB cost is also half of most comparable skills as well. But the thing that is not halved, the thing that is not weak about this, is the magic defense decrease potency. This is pretty powerful. So whoever gets slapped with this, while they may not take a lot of damage from the skill, they are going to be suddenly due for a lot of bonus damage from other skills, which is going to be really scary for them. This is... So like the materia that we recently got, Mana Breach, has the same effect on a non-damaging skill, and the potency is low. So medium potency here means that this is not only capable of doing damage while applying an effect that you can get on one of the newest materia in the game, but also not only does it apply that effect, it applies that effect better than that materia does, even in its best form. So this is a really, really good way of making Sephiroth into a magic breaker. And I think that he probably has, in a lot of ways, the most potential to become a magic DPS unit, which is maybe not what we were expecting from Sephiroth, but I think it's very interesting. And especially because of, you know, Telluric Fury here. This is a big part of that equation, and really it's an even bigger part of the equation because it was given to all of us for free. It's the one piece of Sephiroth equipment that I know that you all have. So let's talk about like a little bit more detail. This is going to be a big HP booster and lightning resistance booster in terms of its R abilities. And in terms of its support materia, like a lot of Sephiroth's gear, the first two of these are going to be ability damage plus 10. This is pretty good all around for him, and I think generally, unless you're going for a very specific build, which I don't think that Final Fantasy VII necessarily lends itself to incredibly well. Unless you're going for a really specific build, this is probably what I want, really, because it is flexible. A lot of Final Fantasy VII characters are known for being both, or at least both having a lot of potential for physical and magical at the same time. Even characters that you wouldn't look at as potential mages, if you build them in the right way, they can be. That doesn't mean that every character should be built as a mage, or any character, or certain characters should be built physically. There are certain people who just have a specialty. But it is worth pointing out those specialties aren't always as pronounced as they are in other games like this, so having just general attack boost is helpful. The Nameless is also going to give you a physical attack damage boost, helpful, but I don't think it's actually the best thing that you could get onto Sephiroth. I think that you're doing this more for the ability, which is really the unique part of it for me. And then, especially if we're going up against, like, say, Ifrit, which, you know, we got a new Ifrit co-op this week as he was released, as this blade was released. I think this is really made for that. It's going to be an 800% mod, magical ice damage, single target skill, and wow. So... think about this. You pull for the banner weapon, the edged wings, you get this, right? But you also have the Nameless, because that was the free sword that we got. So, with your first two ATB, which you get, like, immediately, you go for Telluric Fury. You break magic defense, medium potency, and then you come in with Aerial Frostblade. You come in with this magic ice damage. To a unit that's weak to ice, and you're just tearing them apart. But in addition to that, because this is such a DPS weapon, you're going to be getting magic attack plus 40 points for your R ability, and also ice potency of 36 points. So this is going to be a lot like the Marasume, and I think that because it's a lot like that, like, I don't think that, I think that lightning is probably one of the more privileged elements in Final Fantasy VII, just because of the amount of, like, Shinra robots that are weak to it. So lightning is always going to be a really important and impactful element in this game. And I think that is probably the edge that the Murasame has on the edged wings. But I think that the edged wings have a lot of the same benefits going for them that make the Murasame one of the best weapons in the game. And I think that also, you know, the gear that comes with it, the costume that further increases ice potency, I think that that's another important part of that equation, much like Cloud's Murasame garb was important to the full Murasame build. So this is really something that you can build for in an even more powerful way, and it's also really helpful right now. Maybe it'll help you with Ifrit, because I think that this might be one of the better ways of going about it. Next up, we have the Glare. This is one of the other swords that I've managed to pull for Sephiroth, so I'm kind of trying to get a few more copies on my wish list right now, but honestly it's not my favorite. So looking at the skill, we've got 650 physical non-elemental damage to all enemies, so this is a really good sweeper sword. And while I've been on the record as not being a fan of AoE limit breaks in this game, I do like AoE skills in particular situations. There are times when you really want to be laying in AoE damage consistently and regularly, and like fights like the Balor King are a good example of this, because the Balor King will continuously summon knights throughout the fight, and those knights can be a real pain in the ass if you aren't slapping them in the face real fucking hard constantly. But furthermore, I think that the sword was actually designed specifically for the Balor King, and we're going to see why in just a second. But looking at our abilities, we're going to get 40-point physical attack boost, which is going to be really strong for characters that want a strong physical attack boost. Physical DPS units, this is a good sub-equipment for Cloud in particular, and it also boosts limit break potency, which is quite cool. Not entirely sure if that boosts evocation damage, since that takes up the limit break slot, if that would be completely lost on a character that is using an Esper. But looking at the support materia, we're seeing the same attack boosts that we saw before, but also a 30% earth ability damage boost as the weakness of the Balor King. So you're probably, I don't know, with this sword you're probably putting Quake Blow or Quake Roar Blow on this, but I think in most cases you might want, and you still might make an argument for Quake Roar being the skill of choice to activate this support materia. But even though this isn't necessarily an elemental sword, this will allow you an elemental edge in earth fights. So I think that the Glare is especially cool for that fight in particular, but it can be used in a number of other fights that I think make it interesting. But also forgot to mention support abilities or support materia for the edged wings. Got attack boost, magic attack boost, which is actually going to be 20% set 10%. So this is an instance where this sword gives a little bit more of a specific boost, and that is going to be to magical damage, which is going to benefit its particular skill. But in addition to that, the final is going to be an X Sigil boost. X Sigil boost means that when you put an X Sigil skill here, for the edged wings it's probably going to be Ruinra X, you're going to, instead of taking off 3 sigils when this attack lands, you're going to instead take off 5 sigils, which is quite impactful in any X related fights. So this is going to make him a bit of an X specialist. So Ice X is really going to love this sword, Ice X builds, Ice X parties, because this is going to do everything that they want all in this one sword. Love it. It's another way that also makes it similar to the Murasame. The Murasame got that, but for triangle. Next sword up is the Ayanibi. Not really sure how to pronounce this one, but it is quite the unique sword, and like Man, I've had to go into a lot of detail about a lot of Sephiroth's gear so far because it is very unique. Like, it is very different than a lot of the gear that we've seen already for this game in a lot of fundamental ways. They did some new stuff here. But before I talk about that, I also do want to mention Ardent Flare. Ardent Flare is Sephiroth's second limit break, and his first is just a regular single target damage skill. It is more powerful than Ardent Flare. Ardent Flare is a bit nerfed, but it's also a single target skill, so that's still good in my opinion. But it's going to give a general attack increase, and this is interesting because there are currently basically no ways to increase your attack outside of some of the items that they give you in Crisis dungeons. That's really it. So in fight, there is no way to increase your damage. However, that changed with Ardent Flare, and it also changes with the Ion Bee. So the Ion Bee is going to give you a magical attack increase, high potency, for a very long time. So this is really going to be like magic crack for materia crack even, for cracked materia, for Sephiroth. It is also going to apply regen, not a huge deal, not very long either, and also a very weak magical heal. Not great, but it you know, I'm not mad at either thing. Neither thing is bad. I'm not necessarily sure why they put heals this small on things, but they do. You might as well make the most of it, I guess. The Ionibi is also going to give you, for its R abilities, an HP boost, but not the highest one that I've seen, but an ability potency boost, which is very cool. That's going to be generally helpful in building up your attacking power. Additionally, you're going to get ability damage 20% between those first two mods, and this one's kind of odd, but a healing ability up of 20%, which makes this sword really strangely well-rounded, both in its stats and its abilities. It's going to do a lot for you. Maybe, I guess the healing power is there to make the regen more impactful. But, like, if there was something that I chose to modify on this, it would be buff duration time, not the healing aspect. Oh well, it's certainly an interesting sword and worth getting, I would say. Especially if you're going for the magical attacking damage Sephiroth build. Prototype Crimson Blade. Attack, right. I keep forgetting that attack is general. So attack boosts are pretty cool. Fire potency, actually pretty helpful for this in particular. 520 mod at max fire damage, magical fire damage at that, to all enemies. So this is another way that Sephiroth becomes a massive damage dealer through magic. And unlike the Glareed, which is a physical AoE, this is going to be a magical based AoE in fire, and I think that that is quite strong. If you have it, let's see, what is it? I think it's the weapon enhancement fight that gives you the grindstones. That is a fight versus the 3 soldier 3rd class fighters that are ice. In that fight, it is probably one of the more beneficial fights to have AoE skills, and AoE fire skills are really helpful there. So I think that this particular katana is going to be amazing for that fight. Maybe where you would have used the Glareed versus the Balor King, you would be using the prototype Crimson Blade versus the 3 type, I keep wanting to call them type 0 soldiers, the 3 3rd class soldiers. Then looking at the support abilities, we're getting 2 magic attack damage boosts on this one. So really going into quite a lot of magic attack damage here, but also a general ability boost that's going to help with other physical skills if you are running one of those with this. but this is definitely a katana that would help lean Sephiroth very heavily. And then we have the CC Alloy Sword. The CC Alloy Sword is a lot like the sword that we just mentioned, except that it is magic attack focused in its R abilities, boosts lightning potency instead of fire, and has lightning AoE damage, but it is still magical, so a lot of the same stuff is going to apply here. I don't necessarily know that there's quite as good a fight to really showcase lightning AoE skills in the same way that fire AoE skills can be utilized, but this looks like a pretty good weapon. It's also a little bit more general. Nope. Because the other one was an attack booster on main, this one's an attack booster on support materia. Less of a magic booster on support materia, but also more of a magic booster on its R abilities. So I think this kind of balances out to where it's probably giving you kind of the same spread in a different way than the previous sword. This is kind of a different way of making them similar while not making them the same. Even though they are different elements, there are other aspects to them that are different that might influence you in using them differently. Especially using them as sub-weapons, I think that, you know, with differences in our ability is a lot more impactful there. The Radiant Aurora on the Northern Lights is going to be a really helpful boost, I think, in certain fights, especially in a lot of harder content. As we'll often find that attacking debuffs applied to enemies can make our party a lot safer, especially when these debuffs can be applied regularly. And the Northern Lights is going to enable that through the Radiant Aurora, which is still going to be doing a pretty decent physical non-elemental damage mod, while also getting a high potency physical attack decrease that's going to last for quite some time. So this is a really effective way of defanging a lot of physical enemies in this game, and I think that this could make teams a lot safer that are running Sephiroth. This is one of the ways that Sephiroth can defend his party pretty effectively against physical bosses. And I think that this also gives him the ability, this gives a great synergy also with the Mithril Type 0 Katana in terms of like allowing him to survive. But we'll get into that shit. You know what? We might as well talk about it next. What's the support material on this bad boy? So this is another physical attacking katana. So we're going to get 20% ability damage boost up and 20% physical attack ability boost up. So so there is a little bit of a magic modifier here. This is still going to help for more magical builds of Sephiroth, but it's mainly going to be helping the physical builds. Which skips us over to the Mithril Type 0 Katana and Steadfast Stance. So I just want you to imagine the last skill, which is lowering the physical attack of an enemy. And then you follow that up with Steadfast Stance, which is going to increase your physical defense, but also apply regen once again, and give you a small potency physical heal. So kind of the defensive version of the Ion Beast skill. This is a very similar piece of equipment to the Ion Bee. It's just kind of the defensive half of that equation. However, in terms of support materia, it's definitely a magic attack booster, which is pretty helpful, and isn't going to be super helpful in combination with the sword that I just mentioned, the Northern Lights, in that is a very heavily physical sword. However, once again, this is going to make Sephiroth very safe. You know, you're lowering the boss's attacking power and increasing your defense. You've basically stacked a lot of difficulty in the way of that boss dealing damage to Sephiroth specifically. Unlike the Northern Lights, this is only going to keep Sephiroth safe though, and I'm not generally the biggest fan of this in the single target I don't like this sword as much, but I think it is interesting to note as a potential combination with the Northern Lights, because it could be pretty helpful in that way. This guy is also going to boost your HP and your magic ability potency. So again, a lot of magic attack steroids on this actually. It's not providing you with a new magical attack, but it is potentially, let's say you're using this with something like the Edged Wings, which is giving you a powerful magical skill. Well, then you would be boosting the power of that skill up quite a bit, and really reinforcing that instead of maybe kind of building up what this does. You know, I kind of prefer that to, I prefer getting more damage on the other ability that I have equipped to the Ianibi and its idea of giving me more healing power. We've already talked about you, so the last sword that we have to discuss for Sephiroth is going to be the Shinra Blade Model 1. So this is going to be very, very high modifier magic damage. Yeah. This is non-elemental magic slapping. This is his biggest and baddest magical skill. We're getting attack and ability potency, so I think those both do basically the same thing. Oh. Yeah, they are very incredibly similar. So just good general damage up. Interesting that it doesn't focus as much in magic. This one does though. Okay, cool. So we're getting a lot of magic modifiers here. So that's really gonna crack out the power of this. Really bump that up quite a bit. So this is probably his strongest skill in a lot of ways. Maybe not the most useful, maybe not the coolest, but if you just need something that slaps real fucking hard, this has all of the hard slapping potential that you could possibly want. It is going to slap the hardest. But also worth pointing out here is that much like the Glari, this one has a third support materia slot that is going to give you access to water ability damage plus 30%. As this is a very, very, very strongly magic-focused katana, I would say that you're probably going to want to run Watra in this slot. Maybe even Water Breach if we ever get that. But no, actually I'm not sure if Water Breach counts for this. And maybe it just, maybe that's not the smartest. Well, you still run Watra in one of the others, but you could also, Watra Breach, or Water Breach, I guess, would also probably activate the magic attack boosting areas. So this is a good katana to run a Watra materia with. And again, it's not dealing water damage itself, but it could give you a bonus to your water materia for sure. So this could be an important sword in fights where the enemies are particularly weak to water. One of the only things I will say about this spreadsheet that I think is kind of unfortunate, I'm not really sure where to go in-game to check a lot of this stuff necessarily. But we've got the Edged Wings training garb, but clothing, stuff like that. Here we go. So this is going to boost magic attack, and it's also going to boost ice ability damage. Again, just two different ways of building up the power of the skill on the Edged Wings. Aerial Frostblade. But that's actually not his only piece of equipment. Okay. boosts attack and physical defense, and makes him look like Raiden from Metal Gear Solid. So, Metal Gear Solid 2, I mean. Holy shit. Okay, so that is basically all the ways that you can trick out your Sephiroth. I really hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a little bit long, but there is a lot to cover because this game came out with a lot of options for each character, which I think they really needed. Like, this game probably couldn't have launched with less than 10 weapons for each one or something like that. So, really glad to see it, and I'm excited to do more of these videos. So, please tell me what you would be interested in seeing. What character would you like to see next? I think it's probably gotta be Cloud. And like, if this is me, right? My two favorite characters, the ones that I just want to use every opportunity I can, that's gonna be Cloud and Aerith. So they're probably getting videos first, but I don't know. There's not a ton of people on my channel that are necessarily here for Ever Crisis stuff. So if you stuck around to the end, please just leave a comment. Let me know who you are, what you're into, and what you want to see, because I don't know. The majority of the audience isn't into it. I'm still playing the game. I still want to make the content. So tell me how. Help me help you. Help me help you and the audience. So, with all of that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this has really clarified some things for you about Sephiroth, or helped you understand how you might use him. But also, I'm remembering that I totally screwed up my wish list during this fight, so I'm gonna go back and fix that. Also, oh, I guess I didn't save it. Cool! Didn't remember that it worked that way necessarily. Okay, so what other Sephiroth thing do I want? I mean, the Ayanabi would really give me a lot of options. I dig the Northern Lights though. And the Shinra Blade Model 1 would just be a good slapper. Be interesting to go on a water team. I don't really have a water team built out too well. I think we'll go for the Ayanabi. I think leaning him into magic early is probably going to work well. Cool. Okay, we'll set that. Alright, well, anyways, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching today. I hope you tune into the next one. And if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I don't understand why this is like a YouTube thing that we have to say to you. Like, do people do this on other platforms? Is this just a YouTube thing? Is it just that like something about YouTube in general makes it onerous to like and subscribe? Is it the lack of like there being kind of a social network here to cause you to reinforce what you like? And I don't know what it is, but like there have been studies that have showed that YouTubers do better when we ask people to like and subscribe. So please do that, because I'm gonna be really sad if you don't like this video. It's gonna hurt me personally. It's gonna make me not happy. Guilt! But also feel just a little bit guilty if you don't check out that link in the description, and link that I'm going to be putting on the screen right now. That is going to be a link to basically my day job, like all the other stuff that I do online, in addition to the books that I write and sell. I am, and I've set it as my goal for this month, and probably what I need to do after I finish recording this video, but finish getting the, I sent out for proof copy. I've mentioned this before. I've sent out for a proof copy of the hardback version of my first novel that I wrote this year, at least. And it was not quite oriented the way I wanted it to. A little bit of fine adjustment could make this a very fine looking hardback book, but for right now, it's almost right. The paperback is certainly available. If you would like to buy that, you can find a link to that in that link, which is going to lead to all sorts of other links. And just peruse at your leisure, window shop, check out the books, and help me pay the bills. Even if it's just by reading a book. I think that's a great way to help somebody pay the bills. So, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy more of the Jackie Fox Media Empire. But no matter what happens, I guess I will see you in the next one.